Imagine a tropical paradise in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles from any continent, a chain of volcanic islands where an ancient Polynesian civilization had flourished for over 1,000 years, developing its own royal dynasties, religious systems, and social structures. Now imagine that kingdom, recognized by the great powers of the world, suddenly overthrown in a matter of hours by a small group of businessmen backed by American Marines. This is the story of Hawaii's transformation from an independent kingdom to America's 50th state, a journey marked by political intrigue, economic exploitation, cultural suppression, and a fight for identity that continues to this day. Before we can understand Hawaii's loss of sovereignty, we need to understand what was lost. The Hawaiian Islands weren't just discovered by Polynesian voyagers, they were deliberately settled around 1,000 years ago by expert navigators who traversed thousands of miles of open ocean using only the stars, ocean swells, and bird migration patterns to guide them. By the late 18th century, the Hawaiian Islands were divided among several competing chiefs, each ruling their own territories with complex systems of land management, taxation, and social hierarchy. The traditional Hawaiian system, known as the Ahupua'a, divided the islands from mountain to sea into wedge-shaped sections, ensuring each community had access to all the resources they needed, from highland forests to coastal fishing grounds. Everything changed in 98 when British explorer Captain James Cook arrived at the islands he named the Sandwich Islands after his patron, the Earl of Sandwich. This first contact with the Western world would set in motion a chain of events that would fundamentally transform Hawaiian society. In the chaos following Cook's arrival and his death in 1779, during a conflict with Hawaiians, one ambitious chief saw an opportunity. Kamehameha, a warrior chief from the Big Island, recognized that Western weapons and ships could give him a decisive advantage over his rivals. Through a combination of military genius, political acumen, and access to Western firearms and advisors, Kamehameha united the Hawaiian Islands under a single kingdom by 1810. King Kamehameha established a monarchy that would be recognized by the major powers of the day. Britain, France, and the United States all acknowledged Hawaiian sovereignty through formal treaties. The Kingdom of Hawaii had its own flag, combining elements of both British and American designs. 8 stripes representing the 8 main islands, and the Union Jack in the corner acknowledging Kamehameha's friendly relations with Britain. The Hawaiian Kingdom wasn't simply mimicking Western powers. It was strategically adopting elements of Western government to protect its independence. Kamehameha III, who reigned from 1825 to 1804, oversaw a remarkable transformation. In 1840, Hawaii adopted its first constitution, establishing a constitutional monarchy with a legislature, an independent judiciary, and guaranteed rights for citizens. The Great Mahele of 1848 represented an attempt to modernize Hawaiian land ownership in Western terms. Traditionally, all land was held by the king and distributed to chiefs who allowed commoners to work it. The Mahele divided lands among the king, the chiefs, and common people, creating private property rights. While well-intentioned, this system had devastating consequences for native Hawaiians, many of whom didn't understand the Western concept of private property and lost their lands to foreign speculators. By the mid-1800s, Hawaii had become a sophisticated Pacific nation. Honolulu was an important port for the whaling industry and a crossroads of Pacific trade. The kingdom maintained diplomatic missions in major capitals worldwide. Hawaiian monarchs like Kamehameha IV and Kamehameha V worked to build hospitals, schools, and infrastructure while carefully navigating the competing interests of Britain, France, and the increasingly assertive United States. If you want to understand why Hawaii lost its independence, you have to understand sugar. The American Civil War of the 1860s disrupted Southern sugar production, creating enormous opportunities for Hawaiian planters. American and European businessmen, many of them missionaries or sons of missionaries, established massive sugar plantations across the islands. These plantations required enormous amounts of labor, far more than the declining native Hawaiian population could provide. A devastating series of epidemics brought by foreign contact had reduced the native population from an estimated 300,000 to 800,000 before Western contact to less than 40,000 by the 1890s. To fill the labor shortage, plantation owners imported workers from China, Japan, Portugal, the Philippines, and other nations, fundamentally changing Hawaii's demographic makeup. By the 1870s, these sugar planters, mostly American and European businessmen, had become Hawaii's economic elite. But they faced a problem. American tariffs made Hawaiian sugar less competitive than sugar produced within U.S. borders. In 1876, they achieved a major victory with the Reciprocity Treaty, which allowed Hawaiian sugar to enter the United States duty-free in exchange for giving America exclusive use of Pearl Harbor as a naval base. This treaty tied Hawaii's economy to the United States and gave the sugar planters enormous wealth and political influence. But it also made the planters increasingly frustrated with the Hawaiian monarchy, which they saw as an obstacle to their interests. When King Kalakaua tried to assert Hawaiian independence and revive traditional culture, the planters pushed back hard. In 1887, a group of these businessmen, backed by an armed militia, forced King Kalakaua at gunpoint to sign a new constitution that stripped him of most of his power and restricted voting rights based on property ownership, effectively disenfranchising most native Hawaiians while giving significant power to foreign residents. Hawaiians bitterly called it the Bayonet Constitution. When Kalakaua died in Kemawan, his sister Liliuokalani became Hawaii's first and only queen. Queen Liliuokalani was sophisticated, educated, and determined to restore power to the Hawaiian people. She was also a talented composer. You might know her most famous song, Aloha O, which remains beloved today. The Queen announced plans to promulgate a new constitution that would restore voting rights to native Hawaiians and return power to the monarchy. For the sugar planters and their allies, this was unacceptable. On January 16th, 1893, a group of 13 men calling themselves the Committee of Safety, made up of American and European businessmen and sugar planters, decided to overthrow the Hawaiian kingdom. Their leader was Sanford Dole, son of missionaries and a prominent lawyer. Here's where the story gets particularly troubling. The conspirators knew they couldn't succeed without American military backing. John L. Stevens, the U.S. minister to Hawaii, was sympathetic to annexation. despite having no orders from Washington to do so. Stevens ordered 162 U.S. Marines from the USS Boston to come ashore, ostensibly to protect American lives and property. The presence of American troops was meant to intimidate the Queen and her supporters. It worked. On January 17, 1893, facing armed American forces and knowing that resistance would lead to bloodshed, Queen Liliuokalani yielded her authority, but not to the conspirators. She yielded to the United States government, expecting that when Washington learned what had been done in their name, justice would be restored. She wrote in her statement, "I, Liliuokalani, do hereby protest against any and all acts done against myself and the constitutional government of the Hawaiian Kingdom. Now, to avoid any collision of armed forces and perhaps loss of life, I do under this protest, and impelled by said forces, yield my authority until such time as the government of the United States shall, upon the facts being presented to it, undo the action of its representative and reinstate me in the authority which I claim as the constitutional sovereign of the Hawaiian Islands." It was a remarkable act of restraint and faith in American justice. The conspirators immediately declared a provisional government and sent representatives to Washington seeking annexation. But Queen Liliuokalani had judged correctly. President Grover Cleveland was appalled when he learned what had happened. He sent former Congressman James Blount to Hawaii to investigate. Blount's report was damning. The overthrow was illegal, orchestrated by Americans without authority, and backed by U.S. military forces in violation of international law. Cleveland demanded that the provisional government restore the Queen, but Sanford Dole and his colleagues refused. They had possession of the government buildings, control of the economy, and they knew that public opinion in the United States was shifting toward imperialism. They simply waited Cleveland out. During this limbo period, Native Hawaiians organized massive protests. In 1897, when a new annexation treaty was proposed, Hawaiian patriots collected nearly 40,000 signatures on anti-annexation petitions, representing the vast majority of Native Hawaiians. These petitions were delivered to Washington and contributed to the treaty's defeat in the Senate. But world events intervened. In 1898, the Spanish-American War broke out, and military strategists suddenly recognized Hawaii's value as a Pacific naval base. Congress bypassed the constitutional treaty process and annexed Hawaii through a simple joint resolution, the same way you might annex a park or post office, not a sovereign nation. On August 12, 1898, Hawaii became a U.S. territory. The Hawaiian flag was lowered and the American flag was raised. Many Native Hawaiians wept openly and refused to attend the ceremony. Life under American territorial rule was difficult for Native Hawaiians. The Hawaiian language was banned in schools. Traditional cultural practices were discouraged or outlawed. Land continued to be consolidated in the hands of large plantations. Native Hawaiians became a minority in their own homeland. Yet Hawaiian culture proved resilient. Families continued to speak Hawaiian at home. Traditional knowledge was passed down through generations. Cultural practitioners kept alive the arts of hula, navigation, and traditional crafts, even when doing so meant defying American authorities. The territorial period also saw significant Asian immigration. Japanese workers became the largest ethnic group. Chinese, Filipino, Korean, and Portuguese communities grew. This multicultural mixing created Hawaii's distinctive local culture, a blend of influences that was neither traditionally Hawaiian nor mainland American. World War II transformed Hawaii's relationship with the United States. On December 7th, when Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor killed more than 400 Americans and brought the United States into World War II, Hawaii suddenly became critical to America's Pacific War effort. The attack also highlighted a painful irony. Japanese Americans in Hawaii, despite facing suspicion and some discrimination, were not mass incarcerated like their counterparts on the West Coast. Hawaii's Japanese population was too large and too integral to the economy. They made up nearly 40% of the population. Internment wasn't feasible. Many Japanese Americans from Hawaii served with distinction in the U.S. military, including the legendary 402nd Regimental Combat Team, which became the most decorated unit of its size in American military history. The war years proved that Hawaii's people were loyal Americans. It also demonstrated that Hawaii's strategic location made it invaluable to American security. These factors would prove crucial in the push for statehood. After World War, Hawaii began pushing seriously for statehood, but the path was blocked by politics. Hawaii's multi-ethnic, non-white majority population made some mainland politicians uncomfortable. Southern Democrats worried that Hawaii would send progressive, pro-civil rights representatives to Congress. Others feared that Japanese Americans, so recently the enemy, couldn't be trusted. Alaska faced similar resistance, but for different reasons. The two territories became linked in statehood debates. Both were non-contiguous. Both had small populations. Both faced mainland prejudices. Hawaiian politicians, led by figures like John Burns and Hiram Fong, worked tirelessly to prove Hawaii was ready for statehood. They pointed to Hawaii's loyalty during the war, its strong economy, and its American values. The argument gradually gained traction. In 1900, Congress finally passed legislation admitting both Alaska and Hawaii as states. On March 12, 1959, the Hawaii Statehood Bill passed the House. The Senate followed on March 11th. President Dwight Eisenhower signed the bill on March 18, 1950. But statehood still required approval from Hawaii's people. On June 27, 1959, Hawaii held a referendum on statehood. The results were overwhelming. 94% voted yes. Only 7,800 people voted against statehood out of more than 140,000 ballots cast. On August 21st, 1959, President Eisenhower signed the proclamation, making Hawaii the 50th state. Church bells rang across the islands. People celebrated in the streets. Hawaii had finally achieved political equality with the rest of the United States. The first elections sent a diverse delegation to Washington. Hiram Fong became the first Asian American senator, while Daniel Inouye, who would serve in Congress for over 50 years, became the first Japanese American in the House of Representatives. But this triumphant narrative obscures a more complicated truth. Many native Hawaiians didn't support statehood. They saw it as finalizing the theft of their kingdom. The referendum ballot didn't offer a choice to restore independence. It only asked whether to become a state or remain a territory. Voting no didn't mean voting for independence. It meant remaining in the same subordinate status. In the decades since statehood, a Hawaiian sovereignty movement has grown, arguing that the annexation was illegal and that Native Hawaiians never legally relinquished their right to self-determination. In 1993, on the 100th anniversary of the overthrow, the U.S. Congress passed the Apology Resolution, in which the United States formally apologized for its role in overthrowing the Hawaiian kingdom. President Bill Clinton signed it into law. The resolution acknowledged that the indigenous Hawaiian people never directly relinquished their claims to their inherent sovereignty as a people or over their national lands to the United States, and that the overthrow was illegal. However, the resolution carefully noted that it didn't provide any legal basis for claims against the United States. It was an apology without remedy. Today, Hawaii faces complex questions about identity, sovereignty, and justice. The Hawaiian cultural renaissance that began in the 1960s has revitalized the Hawaiian language, traditional navigation, hula, and other cultural practices. Hawaiian immersion schools teach children in their ancestral language. Traditional navigation techniques have been revived. In 1976, the voyaging canoe Hokulea successfully sailed to Tahiti using only traditional methods, proving ancient Polynesian navigators could have made these journeys intentionally. Native Hawaiians continue to struggle with disproportionate poverty, health problems, and incarceration rates. Issues of land rights, cultural preservation, and self-determination remain contentious. Some advocate for complete independence, others for a nation within a nation model similar to Native American tribes, still others for improved status within the existing system. The U.S. military presence remains enormous. Roughly 20% of Oahu is under military control. Tourism, while economically vital, has made Hawaii one of the most expensive places in the United States to live, forcing many Native Hawaiians to leave their homeland to find affordable housing. The story of Hawaii's journey from kingdom to statehood is not a simple tale of progress or tragedy. It's both and neither. It's a story of colonialism and resistance, of cultural survival and transformation, of strategic calculation and genuine connection. Hawaii today is uniquely American, a multicultural society where Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and people of mixed heritage form the majority. It's a place where different immigrant communities blended with native Hawaiian culture to create something new. At the same time, Hawaii remains distinctly Hawaiian with a culture and identity that pre-exists and transcends American sovereignty. The questions raised by Hawaii's history remain relevant today. What do we owe to indigenous peoples whose sovereignty was taken? How do we balance economic development with cultural preservation? What does self-determination really mean in an interconnected world? Can historical injustices ever be truly remedied or only acknowledged? These questions don't have easy answers, but understanding Hawaii's journey from kingdom to statehood helps us think more deeply about sovereignty, justice, and the complicated process by which the United States became the nation it is today. The Hawaiian phrase "iai," often translated as sovereignty or life, has a deeper meaning. It refers to breath, life force, and the principle of independence. In 1843, when British occupation of Hawaii ended and sovereignty was restored to the kingdom, King Kamehameha III declared, Ua mauke ea oka aina I kapono. The life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. This phrase became Hawaii's state motto and remains a reminder that true sovereignty isn't just about political control. It's about the enduring spirit of a people and their connection to their land. Hawaii's story reminds us that history isn't just about dates and treaties. It's about people, choices, and consequences that echo across generations. From Polynesian navigators to Hawaiian monarchs, from plantation workers to sovereignty activists, Hawaii's journey continues, still writing its own unique chapter in the story of the Pacific.